I think Alan and I talked a little bit about this too. It's hard to predict, and when the rain comes down, how much of that is washing out. You want to have it there to be able to have those streets, but it makes it hard to treat, and that increases the utilization and the cost.
It's definitely more than what we've used in the past. Just that's just figures, you know.
Yeah. And that difficulty. We were out of school a lot of days, I know, and don't know if we necessarily needed to be. So I think that's part of it.
Okay, we recently purchased a street sweeper, February, clean the streets, storm drains, it works very well on. We got a tube on the back of it that we can just stick down in there and suck all the leaves and stuff out. Just getting in the trial mode right now, seeing how long it's going to take us to get around. We're going to get a program together, hopefully soon. It's on a 7-year lease purchase. Our total cost of $235,232. Asphalt paving program for this year is going to be in Barton Heights, and Brooks subdivision is scheduled to start May. They called and said that they would probably start milling last 2 days of this month, right after Memorial Day. That's hopefully. Let's see, the figures on that was $498.84. Placing of street signs, we've already spent $2,974.53 to date so far this year. Maintenance on 144th. I know somebody had a question about that that I was going to answer.
My question was there construction going on down in there in a new subdivision?
On 144th? No.
Okay.
That I know of.
Good enough.
I think that was one of my questions on, something we looked at last fall. I think it was going to take, I forget how many ton of rock in order to get it down, and it was going to be kind of pushed off. I know it's a difficult road to travel, particularly when it's wet.
But it wasn't. That was said, pushing it off if we graveled it. What we did do was we put 100 tons of crush and run. AB3 is what they call it, which is a finer material, which packs well for a buildup. That took us 2 days to put down. We spent $1,500 on that last fall. That was in October of 9th and 10th, I believe.
And I'm not have you been out there again? I didn't know.
I have been out there, but probably not after the last rain, or last heavy rain anyway, so I'm not.
I went out there about 2 weeks ago, and there's some dry spots through there that's washed out.
But we'll address that in the near future.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Try to get some road rock on there, seeing the winter's over. That'll make it look a lot better anyway.
Very good.
We did some painting and some striping, and then crosswalks downtown, which paint's not holding up very well there, Mayor. Sorry about that.
I know, it's all right. We'll get it going again.
We got street asphalt patching going on right now. We did Tillman, and they're working on Emery. I'm not really sure if they got that done today. In various spots around town. I believe they got Hospital Drive. Somebody complained about
Did you already do something on Hospital Drive? Because I drove it a couple of times. I couldn't find a big pothole.
this morning.
Oh, well, I looked this weekend. I didn't see anything too big, but.
Yeah, right there by the dentist office was the worst.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's it. Okay.
I've got some questions on some other areas in town. Up in Diamond Crest, Paradise Lane, that's concrete. There's a lot of places in there that are going to get really big real quick. I mean, they're starting to really chip away.
Correct.
And so what's the plan for that in when's that planned to be
I
fixed?
was kind of hoping for school to get out, because I've got them marked, we kind of got them measured, and we got to get up there and saw cut. It's going to be piece patch, and they're kind of here and there, so we're going to do the best we can. I was kind of hoping for school to get out, maybe the bus service, and we can work all day on it.
And then, I think I read in here, where the storm drains are at. When you're driving down the road, it's like chunk,
Yeah.
chunk, where those drop
Yep.
down.
We've got
And I
them
know
all
Diamond
over.
Crest isn't the only subdivision. I was out in Hills of Shannon, and it's like every one of them, it's like you felt like you was going down Washboard Hill, as I call it. So how can those be fixed, and what's the plan on those?
There's a lot of them, and there are all over. I believe it's due to drought and wet. Series of the years have made those settle. Asphalt doesn't look too bad in those areas. I call them inverted speed bumps.
But, as the traffic goes over that, so how can those be fixed?
They can be cut out and ground out, asphalt put back in. It takes a lot of time to get everywhere. We'll start planning, try to get as many as we can. We got a lot to do this year. Hadn't planned on addressing all of those. We've got,
But I just know, as the years go by, so I don't know if we can look at a plan to, whether it's per subdivision or how that can be done too. And I know it costs money,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
and then I got
Maybe
one.
prioritize based on
Yeah,
how bad they are.
yeah. And then one other question on repairs. It's not necessarily repair and patching, but I was asked to go to the end of Pine Street, where that street just stops. So where that street stops and where that dirt cul-de-sac, I'm gonna say, is, and I didn't look, and I didn't think to ask Jack in planning and zoning, where that street stops and the cul-de-sac starts. Is the cul-de-sac on private property? Do you know?
I believe it is.
So if it is, and there have been people that have tried to turn around in that dirt cul-de-sac and maybe gotten stuck or different things like that, should we, since that's where the street ends and the city stops maintaining, should there be posts put up there or something to keep people from going any further, or
Well,
maybe I'm asking the wrong person?
Seeing it's already there, we can maintain it with gravel. It's a turnaround for all deliveries, maybe school buses, I don't know, trash trucks. There's no houses on those cul-de-sacs, so we don't justify paving yet.
Okay. So would those not be paved at the time that that's developed? That's not the
Yes.
city's responsibility at this
It
point in
shouldn't
time
be.
to pave.
Kinda hoping
That's
not.
what I was asked about
Yes.
the curbs and paving, so I didn't know if there was another way to address it, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we could, like Alan said, put down some gravel for now to help
Yeah.
with that service.
We've been up there and kind of bladed around, but we didn't put any gravel down yet.
Yeah.
Okay, it should be, and then it should be as development occurs.
Yeah.
That should be.
My understanding is that'll be a thorough street. There really won't be a cul-de-sac
Right.
there, but anyway, okay. But I think there's maybe 3 or 4 of them
Yeah.
that are like that
Yeah.
are just dirt. Okay.
There you
Pine, maple, and cedar.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, Maple Lane.
Do you want to ask Jack about the cul-de-sac?
I had asked him, but I didn't know if the city owned them or if they were private. What we had talked about at planning and zoning the other night, I'm asking now, but how we can, what we're responsible for. So I think we've talked about it here, about just putting more gravel down. So,
Making it passable.
yeah. That's all I have, thank you.
Let's see, where were we? Improve storm drains as possible. We've got a few that are getting pretty bad. Think of the street now. We got one on Maple Lane that's gonna have to be addressed. It's sinking. It's pretty old, it's decaying. as they get a crack in them, get a hole started, it just starts, all the soil just starts eating away, getting right into the storm drain. So that's one that we're gonna have to address. The other one's on Quincy, which is drop grates in the street. Hoping for an improvement there at some point. I don't know whether we're gonna get to it this year or not, but it holds a lot of water, needs to be all redone. Something to look at in this future.
Is there one over here on Meadow too, just right across by the apartments over here on this street by Johnson's Insurance Company, that north-south road right here?
No, a drop.
It needs to be fixed. I don't know if that's one that needs to be looked at. or-
Mill and Main,
Yeah,
the one, the deep one. That would be a nice one to raise. I don't know if we can get rid of it.
okay.
We need to start working on a negotiate new shared road maintenance agreement with the county. Jack knows a little bit more about that than, or how we're going to approach that, I guess. We have a lot of roads that we really need to get straightened out of who's doing what, whose responsibility is what. One that we have been doing, but we need to get rid of is outside the city limits, and it's on Martin Road. There's a bridge on that stretch. We don't want it. We're gonna add a water line for fire protection and equipment wash station out the street department building. Something we probably need to be thinking about in the near future is expanding salt storage in the north end. With the new school up there, there's probably going to be bigger housing additions going in. It's a long way back to the barn. So that's going to mean a place. I'm kind of looking there behind Diamond Crest at the pump station. I think we have some ground, but I haven't got that far yet. Trends, we're seeing storm drains continue to settle due to decaying concrete and metal culverts. We found another one up there on the F Highway. I kind of knew about it ahead of time, but I didn't know it was going to be this quick falling in. I knew it had some rust. I didn't know it was going to be that bad. Address the 134th Street issues. Annual repairs, it's just not holding up. I got is there any questions about that? Okay, I'm going to move on then. If questions come up about that, I've got some answers, which I don't think we can hold. I don't know, but actually we can hold Superior Building responsible, since they did the work on the contract last year.
Well, since you brought it up, what are your thoughts?
I got a letter back from Vance Brothers that did the work. Definitely you're Ward 3, right? Who else is Ward 3?
So they're basically leaving it to us.
Why don't we look at what our options are?
Yeah, I don't quite.
We talked a little bit about a few options, but I think we need to figure out, identify ways we can address that.
I don't really agree with it, but anyway, it is what it is, and that road just keeps falling apart. Well, we're addressing road damage caused by trash trucks and recycling trucks. Actually, Martin Heights got hit pretty good last year, falling out. Now it's just decaying roads. Patching, we've got it on the asphalt program this year. And got street signs with new ones as necessary. Our mowing, it's increasing with additional roads. Sidewalk improvement, when they're always needed, we have them all over town. You need to find out.
So with that commercial from downtown up to the school, what can we do to improve that? I know that's one that consistently is a problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of steps that shouldn't be there. I've asked about that over the years. I really haven't got a solid answer. It needs to be addressed. The storm inlets, they all need to be ground off level with the slope of the terrain. It's a lot of concrete. Don't know whether we can hold property owners do that. Sidewalk is connected to the curb most of the way, which I feel, yeah, street, I don't know. Come up with an answer. We'll be glad to do it.
Is that something we can maybe look at a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
We
know
have a sidewalk on both sides.
No, just one side, west side.
just the west side. A lot of people like to run that down.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've got kids on it every day.
yeah, so walking, it's cool.
I'm going to go back. I said I didn't have any more questions, but I do. I want to go back up to the mowing is increasing. Did you say a while ago that you guys mow Haverly Park? Do you mow all of the park, Haverly Park out there?
No,
Okay.
no, that's shared with the parks. They do other side of the lake. We do around our building, backside of the dam. We do all that. Okay, our capital needs, uniloaders, we currently lease. We might be thinking about at some point buying regular used machinery there. Use it, maybe not daily, but weekly. Zero turn mower could be useful. We're going to have to start thinking about a dump truck. I'm not talking, next year, but in the near future. Roadway tractor mower, as we take care of these highways and take over the state highways, the right-of-ways. It's a lot to mow. We're going to have to put 2 people out there. A new facility, they've talked like the water department's going to have to expand in the next, I don't know how long that's going to be. They're going to need our property, I'm guessing. Or at least that's what I've been told. That's a possibility. So, where do we go? Who knows? Something that we're going to have to look at. And we talked a little bit about the new salt storage. As the city grows, it's going to have to happen at some point. Maybe even something to the south if we can find a little piece of property we can store some salt. Completing Amory Road asphalt. I think I've said before that we could put that Amory into our asphalt program. It's a pretty good stretch. It's decaying. I know we've put a lot of money into that part of that road since '08. Might take a little bit more than what budget allows. I don't know if we can get it into a capital improvement, kind of what I'm trying to lean towards. And that's what I do not have that with me. I can sure
I
get
know
it.
it would be a ballpark, but
at a minimum of putting 4 inches of asphalt on it, and some deep patching is what it needs, minimum. Usually figure, and this is rough estimate, 100,000 a mile for 2 inches. So 200,000.
Ballpark, something like that.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do something with all the driveways too, and raising the mailboxes and everything, because we can't lower the road, or it's not feasible to lower the road. And that's what I have. Any more questions?
See,
So, I'm just curious, does your department have any kind of like quality control, like standards or review process when you guys working on a project, anything like that? Or just like a periodic, review of how you guys feel about doing things to maybe see if there's like some improvements you can make, things like that?
I don't know how to answer that, really. I oversee most jobs.
The reason I'm asking, it's mainly for like snow removal and stuff. I mean, I've gotten a lot of complaints related to things, and I've, told them to go to the city website. But one of the big ones that keeps coming up that I've noticed is when shoveling around like circle areas or like cul-de-sacs, it seems like the driver that may not be making the best way through that. Like for instance, on my house, I share with 2 other people. It's kind of like a half cul-de-sac circle, and it's
On a
like
corner.
it's Belinda and 181st or whatever that street is.
Yeah.
So the driver just goes right by and takes just goes left, right, and doesn't come and get our houses, which I think that all he needs to do is just keep kind of moving around.
Well, you push from the middle out, you know that.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like he goes,
Yeah, I
he just takes the curve and doesn't get that. And I noticed it happens in cul-de-sacs a lot too, where they take more of an inside trajectory, and they don't really go around to where the curbs are.
Yeah.
And scoop that. So I'm
These
wondering.
heavier snows, we usually try to clean them up better. These lighter snows, try not to spend too awful much time on them, but we'll try to do a lot better.
And then the other thing that I've noticed, that I've seen, is with the sidewalk repair program. We had that done in Rollins Landing maybe a couple summers ago, and I'm not sure what happened, but when they laid down the concrete, it's like some extras or something got dripped and dumped on there, and it didn't get smoothed out. So like when you're running on it, like you can see there's like big like mounds of concrete, and I always forget about it because I always want to bring it up and talk about it. But and I always notice it when I'm shoveling, because I do most of the snow shoveling for the neighborhood. So when I go out there, I'm always like, whoa, and I come up bump against you. So that's when I'm like, oh man.
you come out and grind it off.
Yeah, So I'm just wondering, I mean, can you guys come out and grind it, or
Yeah,
maybe
we've
just try
got
to?
equipment to take care of something like that.
Then so when you guys are doing sidewalks, though, I mean, how can you make sure that everything's smooth and stuff like that? Is there?
Well, I actually thought we was doing a pretty good job at it. I haven't had any reports like that. Sure it was us, or was it a contractor?
It was you. Well, I mean, I know we brought a check into City Hall to have it done. We paid materials for it.
Oh, was it a homeowner association? Okay,
So.
we'll take care of
So yeah, I mean, so I don't know if maybe a suggestion would be to maybe have some sort of a quality control type checkoffs or something like that, just to make sure everything. At least we can verify and say, hey, we did this, and
Right.
if anyone
Just a
complains
final
about it.
inspection.
Yeah, final inspection.
Yeah,
type
exactly,
thing,
yeah. We can talk through.
Okay.
So I had a question on the capital needs for the salt sand storage, if we build something, we buy sand earlier on, are we gonna save on that cost that we had this year? If we buy that salt and sand during the off-season and store it, is it worth building a structure to put it in if we can buy it cheaper?
I haven't seen any price adjustments for buying any more of a bulk than what we can hold.
If we buy in July versus buying,
No, but I'll look into that.
because if if it saves us half the price on it, it costs
Yeah.
that much to build the structure, then we might as well build the structure, because then it's not really a capital need.
Yeah.
Expense.
So I've got two for you.
Okay.
One's a hard and one's pretty easy.
All
The
right.
hard one is, if you could help come up with some benchmarks on, so we can kind of have an idea on how we're doing, compared to other communities, budgeted dollars per miles road, that type of thing, that, number of people per miles of road, things that we can kind of have an idea on how are we doing compared to the national average. And the other one is to thank your staff, and particularly Mr. Matthews for his 36 years of service. That's phenomenal.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we don't know where a utility is or it's underground. You can ask Robert.
Those
He'll
people
tell you.
value
With an excellent memory.
And just one comment regarding those benchmarks, or kind of what I think of as performance measurement in looking at that information. Alan, we can work through that information and come up with some stuff. I would hope to incorporate into the budget process so we can have that coordinated. Just will let you know, sometimes we run into issues on those comparables and comparisons, how lane miles are measured, and so some of those, sometimes they're lost in translation, so there's, the possible something. Well, hopefully so, yeah.
Our lane miles are stretched out. Thank you.
Just to piggyback on what you were talking about with Annie Road, it looks like it's 1.25 miles from what I'm.
and particularly knowing that we've done already part of it.
With the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can come back up that one.
But thank you for taking down the initial accomplish sign. I appreciate that. They put a sign up when the first bit was done. People are still blowing tires on the road, so really. And called the election results, and I got 2 phone calls on blowing tires on the road.
I think we saw pictures of the bad tire right in front of that sign, which is pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone need a break or anything?
I have a little comment
Before we go to the next one?
Just asking.
Yeah. On capital improvement streets?
Well, streets, yeah, capital improvements.
Okay, yeah, let's go for it. Good. You got your own timer there?
Yes, I'll set it. Thanks. My name's Jeff Becker, 1504 Second Creek Road. I don't, sometimes I can't remember. So my comments on streets, I bought our building in 2011. It's a little over 7 years ago now, and in downtown. And in that time, they did a brief then overlay in which those streets after the overlay were never painted. No crosswalks were painted back, nothing. And then the overlay was done poorly. I know that was a contractor, but it just was allowed to continue to decay and fill the gutters of the streets, become a mess, tracking dirt into buildings. So it's just, what I'm getting at is, I, as well as all of you guys and everyone else in town and all of our visitors, all travel other towns. Rich towns, poor towns, big towns, small towns. I get in my coffee shop, people come in and talk about what a quaint little town we have, but I also hear what is going on with those streets. It looks like a third world street. Those crosswalks were never painted until a couple weeks ago, and I have to say, Alan, excuse me, I came out and I was excited when I saw those getting painted, finally, because it's a safety issue. It helps the driver know what's coming up. but they were just out eyeballing, spraying paint on the ground, and no forms, no measurements, and there were 5 men standing, in this project, including Alan. My point is, I've run crews, I've run businesses. Efficiency and effectiveness is important. Quality matters. Pride matters. Maybe, I have no doubt that crew is experienced and capable, but maybe there's just some upgrading of training. Maybe there's programs, maybe there's a consultant that can come in and help sharpen the saw a little bit so that we can take the assets that we have and actually show them off a little bit. Painting those curbs yellow, I'm happy to help do that. I know other volunteers help to paint those curbs as well. It makes a remarkable improvement in the experience of driving downtown. So what I would ask is that we both think about the safety, those lines, not just crosswalks, but the center lines, the outer edging lines. Those all matter. They help drivers know where they're supposed to be. They help walkers and pedestrians know where they're supposed to be. And when they're not there, it just creates ambiguity. And they're proven to make a difference. That's why they exist. They've shown to make a street safer. So, and now my code went away to cover any other things. But that was most of it. Just the ongoing maintenance. And if they need help, holler at a downtown association. We've got enough people we can jump out and help, or if it's the once a year help out or whatever it is, but it sure makes a difference. And so if we can keep on an improvement cycle and all that, I know everyone would appreciate it.
All right. Next item on the agenda is item number 6, capital improvement project planning team. You should have a table on the paper for this. And Dan is here. You get 3 minutes.
That'd be great. I'm going to walk you guys through this spreadsheet just a little bit and make sure we're all on the same page. The left-hand most column lists the projects that we've identified as capital improvement projects that we want to get done with the goal being 2020. Yeah, 2020. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to the middle section where you see those colors. Those top 4 projects we've identified, we've already bid out. We already have pretty set in stone timelines for those projects. The couple projects that have been bid together, I've tried to split out between when some of the different work is going to take place, so we have a pretty good picture of what that's going to look like. The blue is estimated engineering time for those remaining projects. The red is estimated construction time for those remaining projects. And as you can see on the bottom, there are a few projects that we have not identified a timeline on yet. As we move a little bit further to the right, we have a construction cost column. Again, the figures in black are figures that have already been bid, except for any potential change orders. Those are pretty locked in numbers. The numbers in red are estimated from our engineer. There is a little caveat there that those estimates were provided in November, so they're 6 months old now. We have asked HDR to update those numbers now that there is some new information that has come out with the steel that all you guys are aware of. We're sure that those numbers aren't all that accurate anymore. Moving further to the right, we have a column of the funding source for each of those projects, and the distribution of that project by funding source is the next column to the right. If we move to the bottom, we have a small little summary chart, and I apologize that that total number didn't show up, but I promise you it is the same $14,800,000 that's above that. Where we have, you can see exactly what we think we're going to spend out of general fund, utilities fund, impact fees, the COP issuance, and the GEO bond, as well as a few projects that we've yet to determine where we might pay those from. We'll get to some additional comments here in a second. Wanted to point out a couple things real quick. In that summary chart, we have $382,000 being spent out of water impact fees. Right now, that has just under $1.2 million in it. So that would bring that balance down to a little over $800,000. the 1.154 million in wastewater or sewer impact fees. We have just over 1.4 million in that fund. So that would take that down to about 200,000. Jack feels a little bit comfortable with that. Just talking about impact fees, we've had that conversation. We feel that that's okay to do at this point.
Do we have any requirements on what needs to be held in those accounts?
We don't. It's purely based on future growth, and Jack can talk a little bit about what future growth might look like or what we're anticipating. But we don't have a policy on what we're required to keep on that at all, no.
And those are just the impact fees, that's not the water and sewer operating funds,
Correct.
just to make sure. that-
Correct, those are completely separate.
Those are separate.
I'm going to jump now to the left and talk about our engineering costs for a few minutes. I have a word there for estimates in blue. We don't have any estimates on any of those projects that are remaining, so there's nothing there. Every number that you see in those columns is a hard board-approved authorization cost that we have, and also the source of funding for those. We've had some conversation about specifically these projects that we've identified as being GeoBond projects. Can the engineering costs come out of the GeoBond? The answer is yes. However, we don't necessarily know that we want to do that at this point. We kind of are leaning towards using that money on the physical project, on the actual construction of that.
I would just comment there that I think that's what the citizens probably would expect when they voted for that as well.
Now, the two columns that should jump out at you are what we've paid so far in fiscal year 18 and what we have committed to that we have unpaid as of right now, or as of May 3rd. If you go all the way to the bottom of those two columns, we've paid out $315,000 to date. Of the authorizations that have been approved, we have $371,000 left to pay. Those two total $686,000 and some change. We've only budgeted $83,600. So we've committed to a lot more engineering costs than what we've budgeted right now. Now, is every penny of that going to be spent in fiscal year 18? Probably not. For example, the pump station, that we know that project is going to go into 19. Surely the engineering costs are going to go into that as well. And the projects that we've identified as an estimated timeline, those are running into 2019 as well. So not every penny of that will be spent, but we're going to need to account for that. So in short, we're looking at $600,000 in engineering costs that we're going to need to budget at some point here. And if you go back to the project cost on the right, we've identified $200,000 coming out of the general fund, that's unbudgeted. Utilities fund, we budgeted $500,000, and that project is going to be about $500,000, so we're okay there. We need to budget that impact fee expense because that was not budgeted at the beginning of the fiscal year either. We're right on track for that $6 million in COPs. The GEO bond approved for a maximum of $5.625 million. Total project cost right now, we have $5.26 million, but I don't want to caution on adding anything into those yet because we don't know what those prices are going to be. Very estimated right now. And then just over $1.25 million or so of projects yet to be determined. So Alderman Chevalier sent an email on Friday asking about how much cash we have on hand. We had a conversation back in December, and hopefully you guys got my email on Friday afternoon. Once we account for the shortfall that we've budgeted, that we've approved in the 18 budget, as well as the 40% reserve policy that our board has set for us, we have about just under 1.6 million of cash that we could use towards projects. The first thing that we need to be concerned about is we have to find that $600,000 funding source for the engineering costs. More than likely, it needs to come from that 1.6 million. So now we're down to about $1 million in that excess cash. It is fairly free cash, but I want to caution you guys on one thing. When we talk about the actual money that we're going to get from the GEO bond, we've approved a funding source for that in that capital improvement sales tax. That tax does not go into effect until October 1st. Usually there's about a 2 or 3 month turnaround for that money to actually come to us. So we're looking maybe December, more than likely January of 19 before we start to see any revenue from that. So we want to hold off on issuing that GO bond until almost as late as the year as we can get, so that when it comes time to actually make that first payment, we have some revenue for that. So the first project on this list is Amory Road Bridge. We've noted that we're going to pay for it out of the GO bond. What's actually going to happen is we're going to pay for that out of the general fund, probably those reserve monies. And then when we get the GO bond towards the end of the year, probably looking at September, maybe October, we do have the ability to reimburse ourselves. So of that $1 million that we've identified as free, we know we're going to probably have to spend almost $500,000 up front on Amory, and we'll get reimbursed later in the year through that GO bond. I know there's going to be lots to talk about streetscapes, so let's touch on that real quick. The 3 phases that we've identified, 1.9 million, just under 200,000, and then the 1 million. Probably, I'm going to say 8 months ago now, 6 months ago, something like that. We had some conversations about kind of reconfiguring phase 1, if you will, and only doing the intersection in one block, either direction, north, south, east, and west, of Commercial and Main, instead of going from 169 all the way down. When we looked at just that plus sign of the cross-section of streets, we were looking at about $750,000. At that point, we did not have any approval on GO bonds or anything, so we were looking at it kind of from a little bit of a different angle. But now I think there warrants to be a little bit of discussion on, let's go back to what those priorities in streetscape are, and let's see if we want to still do that, just that intersection first, or if we want to expand back out to 169 Highway, or if we want to go up to Bridge Street, or what we want to do with those monies.
And the streetscape phase 2, what is this for?
Streetscape phase 2 is north on Bridge Street.
Okay.
And then phase 3 is all the way out to Liberty East.
And so that was only another 200?
Yeah, just 200 for just that little block and a half or so north. And as soon as I get updated figures from HDR on potential construction costs, I'll revise this and I'll get that on to you as well. You'll probably see some authorizations for HDR for the Route DD walking trail, the South Commercial sidewalks. Those will probably be coming up next couple months.
Yeah, I think we're due for a healthier discussion on this before we give the final thumbs up. And I know that several of us had some comments on design issues. I never saw anything come back. I saw a commitment to incorporate, but I haven't seen either error, any example of what that might look like.
Yeah, and I guess updated. I mean, because I haven't seen anything updated since like I think April of last year.
I also want to add another $100,000 in engineering costs on this project.
Is April, is that when we took out some of the planters and trees and that kind of thing?
Well, I believe that's when it was, yeah, that last discussion.
What's in my head too.
So, I mean, that kind of, I talked about it with Cynthia when we had a meeting. I mean, I'm just not sure. Maybe we need to start looking at other engineering firms as well besides HDR. Because, I mean, I kind of just don't think that they're getting a quick turnaround to us on some of this engineering stuff, which it just doesn't seem to me that it should be taking as long as it is for some of the stuff when we're asking for it. Every month we're asking for it. And they keep saying, it's almost here, it's almost here. Well, we don't see it.
Isn't a bad idea.
Yeah, I'll look at our contract with them. I don't know if we're locked into a certain amount of time. It's my project. Do you know? Oh, Jack might know, but I don't know.
Yeah, Jack's given, I'd like Jack to address some of that as well.
Because, I mean, a lot of this stuff, I mean, I really would like to see, some bids from some other engineering firms to see maybe what they foresee costs and things like that to be. And maybe we have some different design options.
Mm-hmm. I pointed out one thing in that email I sent as well that I didn't touch on here, and that's the park playground equipment. We've talked to Todd Goffey, who's our financial advisor, and he specifically stated that that cannot come out of GEO bond. If we have any GEO bond balance, it cannot pay for parks.
That was not included in the language.
Correct.
Yeah, we
At
removed
the
that
same time, I
earlier.
think
We're okay
We
with
need to,
that.
yeah, and so,
It needs to happen.
absolutely.
I brought it up a year ago and we're still sitting here.
Can it pay for parking lots at the park as part of the streetscape?
I don't know.
I believe it could, but we need to confirm that, yeah. I think that's a good point.
'Cause that's one thing that we talked about as well. Yeah, if we can think it in the curbing and the parking, and then we can look at other funds to move equipment or get different equipment.
So you will see a budget amendment, probably May 17th, maybe the first meeting in June. I don't know what that date would be. For that, we'll include that engineering cost that we've approved into the budget, as well as some of these first few projects, specifically the impact fees. So I'll lay all that out pretty clear for you guys. What's that?
But with the playground equipment,
I mean, I think that's a discussion.
I think we have, yeah, I think it's definitely a discussion for you all. We have outlined those items that have already been expended, board approved. And I think part of what we're looking for tonight is that direction of where does the rest of, how do we have the allocation for the rest of the stuff so that we can move forward in formally adopting those plans, as well as identifying the funding and adjusting, amending the budget to reflect that, so that then we have a plan going forward. So yeah, we need feedback from you all on streetscape, on timing of that, and some direction with regard to the outstanding funding that we have.
So this streetscape phase one, this 1.9 million, that was everything.
That
from
1.9
169.
million is 169 all the way to a block east of commercial, and then north and south, one block on commercial.
Well, my opinion is on that, we need to get started on that.
in Bridgeport.
It does include Ridge.
Yeah, a block in north.
I mean, my opinion is we need to get started on that as soon as we possibly can. But, I mean, we've been telling folks that this is what we're gonna do for how long now, and I think we need to get it done.
Yeah, we need to remember that we're also potentially slip lining sewers on those streets, and we're putting new water lines. So once those are done,
Yeah,
we don't want to tear it.
Nope.
right.
Did you say phase one does include Bridge Street?
Yes, I misspoke a little bit. It's 169 to commercial, and then north and south, one block on Bridge. Is that better? Is that right? Is that streetscape?
Yeah, so I have to, if Jack will kind of take us through this thing.
And then the question back to Jack also was on engineering firm, and we did ask what was on, so.
Yeah.
I can run it down.
You've got a question here as well.
Okay. No, well, I don't know if I need it or not.
The question is about our contract with HDR and whether or not it benefits this time to see any other options. I don't know how that contract is worded, there's time.
No, it's, yeah, we can bid it out at any time we want.
Yeah, and the concern is around them getting back to us quickly, and maybe that's much of a play with better progress.
And that's ultimately, we have the option of bidding out individual projects, one by one. Every time you do a project, you bid it out to lowest and best bidder at that time. You can do it the way we do it, which is do an RFQ and base it on qualifications and overall price estimate, et cetera, and go from that perspective. Both of them are viable options. The method we use, not necessarily with HDR, but with any engineering firm anyway, the method we use is generally the cheaper method, and it's the most common method. We changed in 2004 from the previous engineer who was under this type of a contract and had been in for 10 or 12 years at that time, rebid it, came up with a new contractor which is the current one. So it's ultimately a board scenario if y'all want to do it. We just need to put out an RFQ or decide to bid each individual project.
Well, I mean, I certainly, again, I'm just wondering, does HDR, I mean, do they have the bandwidth to handle all these projects? Because it just seems like this getting engineering back, it's taken forever for them to do this, to show us designs, to all this stuff. So I'm just wondering, maybe it's time that we start looking at someone else, at least for some of the projects, these other projects.
When was the last time we reached out to them to ask the status on anything they're supposed to bring back to us?
I got these probably 3 or 4 weeks ago when someone requested what's the update on the plans and where they're at. We're anticipating they'll be ready for bid in about 25 to 30 days. That's what their estimate is. I haven't checked since mid-April, but it was about 45 to 50 then, so somewhere in that.
Was there a way that we can light a fire under them and say we're ready to move forward? What's the holdup?
Ultimately, when they're completed in 30 to 45 days, it'll be ready to go to bid. Put it out for bid. But we'll certainly be making that call tomorrow to find out when are we going to get final plans. Their anticipated schedule after conversations back in April is to present a draft of these to the board. The board made directions on these are the options we want 8 months ago, 10 months ago, 12 months ago, something like that. Yeah. But ultimately, when that occurred, there was a meeting. They were in the room. Here's what we'd like to see. The question is, did they meet what the board at that time requested? I haven't even reviewed them.
And so, and then the question, I guess, to me is, then, Jack, when we've got, you said 30 to 45 days still for final plans, that needs governing body approval. If we've got things to turn around, questions about that, then we're delaying the project more on that feedback. I guess, from what I'm hearing here, is there a way to light a fire under them to get those plans back more quickly so that this group can review them and ensure that's the direction we want to go?
Sure.
Is that what I'm hearing?
And ultimately, it may be that this level of plan, which is, obviously it doesn't have elevations and everything set up in it, but this level of plan may be what, all that we need to make sure it has all of the elements that we discussed. The only issue that I know has not yet been resolved, and that's because it's MoDOT and we're still trying to resolve it, is where or whether we can put the sign down at the end. MoDOT's going to want something if they're going to allow us to put it in there right away. We'll have to figure that out with them. And where that sign sits in priority. It was one of the first things, if you recall, that was pulled out when we did the 750 up to 1.9. So, yeah, we can certainly find that out tomorrow. Get a better idea of where things sit, time-wise.
Is there an option to reverse the existing sign temporarily?
The existing sign is on the other side, and it's not the city's. We have the permit because the state won't issue it to anyone else, but it's actually the Heritage District sign. So, the other aspect of it is, I think they're pushing harder on getting the Amory, Second Creek, thank you, bridge done first because with the anticipated August inspection by the state, making that a 3-ton bridge, we want to be moving on it before it goes to 3-ton because that means if you've got a Ford Escalade or a Cadillac Escalade or a Ford Expedition, you can't drive across that bridge.
How do I put this? This entire board has turned over since this project started. And I feel like we are nowhere further along.
I thought we made that final decision that one night that when we broke it down into phases and we voted on that, I thought, well, we're moving forward.
That's what I
But you
took
took
away
it,
out of that.
yeah.
I think it was in November or December, that meeting. That's what I took away, that we were gonna get started and you were gonna
This
start
year.
this stuff, yeah. So,
There would be shovels in the ground.
yeah. So,
It's a matter of making contact with them and seeing their schedule, where they're at.
or is it a matter of finding some other way to do it?
Yeah, ultimately, I mean, that's,
That's the board's call,
Yeah.
obviously.
I mean, even if we have the engineering, I mean, does that mean we have to go with this firm, or can we look at some other option?
we can, you all have there's no contract for construction. We have a contract for design. It'll, like I said, it'll be ready for bid. It'll be done and ready for bid here 30 to 45 days. Once that's done, if the board doesn't like it and wants to go in another direction, you certainly can hire another firm to do it.
That's gonna be more engineering costs.
I would assume they're gonna do it for cost.
I mean,
Yeah.
they'll have to look at what's there.
So, I mean, again, that's one of the reasons why, I mean, maybe we should stop, locking ourselves into one engineering firm. Because, I mean, if we're in this position and we've already paid all this money and now we're gonna possibly lose some of that, I mean, I don't wanna see that happen again on any other projects.
I think that's obviously potential board discussion.
Sure, yeah.
I would push to have them something just within a month. And if not, I think we need to schedule that discussion a month from now, and at that point, decide whether or not we're going to continue with them or cut our losses before the firm. I appreciate that we've got a lot in the hopper with them, but this is,
Or the other question we can ask is, there's another engineering company that can look at this, and they put it out for bid, and there's a work order, and it completes the, full engineering.
Well, I would certainly hope that that's the method we used, because otherwise we'd pay for the same services twice. If we have somebody else come in to tweak it, yeah, that's similar to an architect designing your home. The plans become yours as soon as you pay for them. They're your plans, and
So if they're close enough, and they give us the finals, and then we bid it out to another engineering firm, we can say, okay, well, right here, we need this change here. Then we're not paying full engineering, we're just paying for it. That might be the path we need to go down, so we don't delay the timeline.
When you call them, since it's on the CIP list, the Transportation Master Plan, I know we're also having to do that, correct?
that's on hold.
It's on hold, okay.
That's what's going to before the election.
I didn't remember that, so thank you. Yes, we did. Yes.
yes, we did.
So never mind, don't ask me about that.
You're thinking planning commission.
That's a pretty sizable carrot, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think
want
part of
the
that
work,
reminder is,
you'll live
yeah, we have a number of projects that are in queue, and we need to be done responsible.
So to that end, I'd love to see that a month from now for board discussion.
We really needed ahead of that, to be quite frank.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
but
that's
yeah.
what- we understand the timeframe, you and I don't go into direction from the group, but within a month, we need to be rolling, is what I'm hearing. Be able
That would
to
be
be
my
rolling.
recommendation.
We need to have approval within a month.
Yes.
From the board, or no approval. We need to have the option to make that call. Whatever that call is, you gotta have all the information to make it.
And that time that
And back to the broader discussion, I really want to see the park playground equipment done ASAP. And I'd love to see one of those be an inclusive playground. We've got enough park space, I think we can figure out how to make one of those.
The heritage ones,
Yeah, which location?
That's for, well,
Yeah.
As far as that playground, I mean, how are we going about, looking into that?
we've not had any discussions as a staff, but I think one of the things that, is a potential, would be, you all have had discussions and have appointments yet to a park board. we could get some feedback from them for recommendations.
So I plan to make those appointments at the 15th meeting. So we will get a park board meeting on the calendar shortly after.
And Jack, one thing I want to make sure then as well, what the structure of the park board, in the existing structure of the planning commission, talk us through the requirements related to park improvements in their
The
final review.
The current policy, which is the Parks Master Plan, leaves infrastructure-related items that go through the Planning Commission for review and approval in accordance with the comprehensive plan requirements. The operational aspects to the Park Board, or in the Parks Master Plan, it calls out to the Board of Aldermen. You run the operations of it day to day without the Planning Commission's input or anything. At that time, the thought was to move away from the Park Board. In this case, the board has appointed, or revised the Park Board ordinance, and we'll have a new one constituted in a week, or a little more than a week, I guess. So that would be the compliance with the Parks Master Plan methodology. Would be Parks Board runs the operation, Planning Commission does the final approval of new construction. Repairs, no, because it's just repairs. That's more likely an operational issue because it's a repair to an existing. But if it's adding new, then yeah, it probably should go through the Planning Commission according to the current Parks Master Plan policy that was adopted in March of last year.
So the Parks Board meets at the end of the month, and we bring up the planning, and then direct.
Yep.
Parks Board.
Yep.
Does everyone understand that? It's a little messy, but.
Yes.
The process is a little,
And since it's the first implementation iteration of it, it's probably going to be a little wonky and a lot of stubbed toes and tripping and falling, but yeah, exactly. A sausage factory being toured.
Any other questions, discussion?
Do you have direction?
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I know that we've got the direction. We are calling HDR tomorrow, lighting a fire under them on the streetscape project so that we can bring plans forward to be able to have some movement within a month. We will, another goal is a budget amendment to include all of the projects here as outlined, addressing all of the items that have been spent. Those that are still estimated, I think we can include the estimates and know that if we have to amend that further, we can do that based on this timeline. And with regard to addition of the parks funds of $150,000, include that we can accomplish through what we've got. We can find funding for it. And then move forward with that discussion of the actual amenities and recommendations through the Park Board, Planning Commission to the board process.
And follow up on if we can do the sidewalks.
Absolutely, yes.
And parking lot, even the sidewalks and parking lot as part of the bond.
Yep.
Because that's one area that's especially by the baseball fields.
Will there have to be any stipulation with other draining or improved draining in that area? With the parking lot?
There's a pretty significant history to improvements at Heritage that I think there are significant costs associated with drainage, parking, the entire project that, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, past repair efforts have not fully addressed the needs because the money was not there. I mean, it's pretty sizable cost.
The question about bond funds for the parking lot and trails in Heritage cannot. The bond funds by the terms of the election were for street-related items, they were all inside a right-of-way. So sidewalks, as long as they're inside a road right-of-way, can be used. Otherwise, we would have had to do two separate bond elections, which we didn't think would be fruitful. And the other aspect of it is, with the reimbursement mechanism, as Dan mentioned, we can reimburse $500,000 for Amory Road. Once that reimbursement occurs, there's $500,000 for parks.
So one of the things that I talked to Cynthia and a couple others about on Heritage is a couple people brought up moving the equipment up to the hill, and to make that more accessible, we'd have to extend the parking towards that hill. If it ever flooded on top of that hill, we'd have a lot of water. So that might help solve some of the problem. The equipment wouldn't get underwater. The parking lot would still get underwater, which is by design, right? It's in the floodplain. But the equipment-
Are you talking the one over by Liberty, that hill? Yeah.
So if we extend the parking lot towards that, and put a better drainage around it, maybe we keep it from flooding the place where the kids want to play.
Yeah.
It's about 20 feet up there.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's good. And then there's easy access for trail to go
Right.
out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that would be something that we could look at in putting information together for Park Board to review.
Okay, and we already have a sidewalk up to it. It just dead ends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And you have direct street access as
Right.
well. It's the four-way, which if Liberty and Main get redone there, with the pedestrian crossing stuff, you can build a park entrance right there and have a small parking area up top, next to the stuff that's out of.
We already have concerns about parking at Heritage for baseball anyway, so
Right.
expand that. Then we could, maybe next year, look at maybe if we get to, the bond doesn't, can't cover it.
I would like to ask, when you bring the budget amendments forwards, that we have an updated financial report on the budget, what that looks like, along with doing those amendments.
And I've not talked to Dan yet about this, we have a budget meeting tomorrow, because that was one of my goals, was to be able to come forward. We're 6 months into the budget, let's look at where we are. So that would be exactly, yep, so that would be hand in glove there. So. We have,
Yep, we have public, you guys are good, we have public comment on this item as well. Mr. Becker.
Jeff Becker, again, 1406 Second Creek Road. I think I misspoke my address earlier. This is, I worked extensively with the Downtown Association or the Heritage District on streetscape process and planning. We did our side charrette process simply because HDR apparently was not listening to us, because every time we had a meeting with HDR that they hosted, and then they came back with their revised plans, they virtually ignored all the primary issues that the residents and business owners were having. So this is, it's proof of that. This is essentially their original plan of 5-foot sidewalks, 5.5-foot sidewalks, and while they don't put in the plants, they leave the space for the planters in this plan. They don't put the steps up Main Street in front of Jeans and Nellie's. We simply designed some comfortable steps with railing periodically put up so that people could comfortably step up and down that elevation, but also have railing. Some basic designs, some crosswalks along that where the park comes out and it's a natural crosswalk. People use it regularly, but it's again not put in here like we'd asked. Just a lot of things. And I have to say, this is a much more complex plan than what we were even asking for. So to the discussion of cost of wasting $306,000, I don't want to waste it, but there's probably well over $300,000 of cushioned project in here that could be simplified and actually improve the project and lower the cost. And just FYI, I went through this process in 2 different communities in the Crossroads, both as on the Parks Commission and what our role was, or excuse me, the Arts Commission and our role, and on the Main Core project, which was a $3 million project and probably 5 times more extensive than this, and then in the Crossroads over and over again. I've been through this, and the way this has been handled by HDR is I've said it in other meetings, it's insulting. And we've wasted a great deal of time and money by just sitting there with that. So I'd be happy, I will email all of you the final result that Jonathan Justice sent the alderman and the mayor last September 16th. It was the result of the downtown voting and what the priorities were and why we wanted the things that we were asking for. We live there and work there, and we experience that traffic and those sidewalks every single day. And I think I saw HDR there 3 times. 3 different small periods. So I'll send that stuff to you. Thank you for the time.
Can I just make a comment real quick? So I don't know. I'm looking at the right in front of Nellie's and all that, and I think that's what these things are. I think these are those steps that we had talked about.
Can you point out which page?
It's the last page, 10C5. If I remember correctly, they were going to be like kind of, the platform was going to come out a little bit. There's going to be some railings there, and then the rest of those were steps.
I'm still on Bridge Street, forgive me. These are front and back pages, so.
Yeah, if you look at the last.
10C5.
Sidewalk too.
I know it says 7-inch or 7-foot sidewalks, but if I'm not mistaken, that other section that's right there, it kind of looks like.
See those boxes that are in there? Those are planters.
No, I actually think those are, what they did was they made little extensions of the sidewalk, and there were little rails on there. And then those other things were the steps that are going.
So what we were asking for is just steps all the way down, like you see in some of these outdoor venues where there's concerts and there are required steps. It's all over. So if you're right, and I thought they were planters, so forgive me if I'm mistaken on that, but even if you're right, that minimizes opportunity for the kids to come out with their ice cream and their fudge or whatever, and sit and watch the concerts that may be going on the stage directly across the street. That's a cost, which you're building a different structure and reducing the usability and the pleasure from that location. We went through hours and hours, and John, you were at 1 or 2 of those. We went through a great deal of work and back and forth and idea sharing about what works and what we'd like to see, and a lot of this just completely ignores, and at every meeting, either ignored it or made our suggestions so radical that it seemed like it was a crazy suggestion.
I think, I'm going to interrupt you, Jim. I think back to what John was saying, we took the planters out. I think we took the planters out, and what you're seeing there is where we provided opportunity for the merchants to maybe bring some little tables out and chairs to sit in there.
So I'm looking at these numbers like on Bridge Street where it says 5.5 feet.
Yeah, but Jeff, look at the extension between where the parking is and the sidewalk though. I think that was like, it's going to be paved like brick. So it's going to extend out the sidewalk.
You think that or you know that?
I wish Jack was in here. I don't know where he's at.
Because what we're looking at is a black and white draft instead of something that we can define.
They're not as informative as they could be in providing that information to answer the questions from my perspective as somebody completely new to the process.
But Jeff, that would be my expectation. So in fact, if I don't see that in the final design, I will not go for it. That's the expectation is what I assume this.
Okay, so that's why
So let's push for the finals.
Yeah.
And then let's review it.
So that we can review it.
So we can make sure it's our design drawings. So.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Jeff. All right, agenda item number 7, chapter 24.010, regulations for housing of animals and poultry.
The reason I asked to just review the ordinance was we'd had a couple of complaints, so I just wanted to look at the ordinance, see what it said, and if there really was a valid complaint on the distance that we were looking at and stuff. So and I read it, and I don't know Chief, did some of the officers go out and measure?
Yes, we did. And you talk about the one that was waiting for sea life.
Yes.
Yes, I'll ask Officer to go out there. First up.
Can you use the mic?
Yes, I asked an officer to go out, I want to say Monday, but I'm not 100% certain, and ask him, I gave him the written complaint that came in, and said, go out, assess this, is this accurate in the description, and what is and what isn't. As far as the location of the pin up against the house under the deck, he relayed that was accurate. It sits inside of 75 feet of two other residents. Not the complaining residents, but the two closest adjacent residents. I believe one of them was under 60 feet, and I think the other one may have been under 30. I'm going from memory. I have notes on my desk. I can pull if I need to. He did indicate that as far as cleanliness, it was well kept and clean. Did not notice odor or anything like that. But the biggest thing he saw that was in violation was the distance requirements there.
From the other two neighbors, not the one
Yes.
that complained?
Yes. Didn't even get into addressing the noise thing at that time, because that's kind of handled under a noise ordinance, a separate ordinance there. And then I left town, I put that kind of on hold, I was going to deal with it when I come back. And while I was gone, I got the email with the agenda, so it was on there. So I figured I was going to get an update today when I got back, and I think I'm up to speed on about 95% of it. So that's kind of how we got to here.
So Amanda's here. So my understanding was that it was still over 50 feet, right? Between the coop and the houses?
Yes.
Okay. So
I can pull my officer's notes. I'm going from memory. So
I was out there today too. It's,
Good.
there's two coops, they're both over 50 feet from the neighbors. Because they have a fence too, the fence is you can go by the fence measurements with the GIS too.
Yeah, when I was looking at it on GIS, from the coop to one house was roughly 50 and the other one was roughly 55, so it's on that 50, 55.
okay. So and I've tried to do a lot of research and look at stuff. And honestly, I could not find a reason why it needed to be at 75 versus 50.
There's no science in my research.
So I'm just wondering, why not just reset 50
Jay's wife.
and be good to go?
That all come about in some of the previous conversations regarding this topic, which I think was 2012, 2013, somewhere right around there. You weren't on the board, but I know you were in on some of the conversations and got some of the spillover on that. Entirely different location. That was the decision the board at that time made after looking at what several different places do. I mean, some cities don't allow roosters, some do. Some allow 3, some don't put a number on it and go strictly off cleanliness. I mean, for every city, there's about as different many ways to do it as there are cities that allow it or that don't allow it. So there's no industry standard, there's no urban chicken to people population ratio to follow or anything like that either. It's just a matter of setting down the guidelines that works best for Smithville.
Right. So I'm in favor of moving it to 50. I don't know what your thoughts are if we can do that.
I know I said this via email, but I talked with both Amanda Casey on Saturday morning, and then with Mike, I forget his last name, sorry, but Carrie Ann's husband there Saturday afternoon. And just looked at both. I mean, I would echo your officer's comments, and the coop seemed very clean. I was in the backyard, I didn't notice any odor or any issues that way, so cops are spot on. And like they also said, the complaining house is about 90 feet away. I live 270 feet away. I've never had any issues with the rooster. I hadn't heard it at all until I had open windows one morning, about a week and a half ago. I barely noticed it, but if you're listening to it, because it's quiet enough, you did hear it, but it's much quieter than the neighbor's talks. And I live, where we live, back in 12 or 13 was, Roots lived at the house next door, and they had chickens all through their backyard. Never had any issues with that. I think the chicken ordinance, as it is now, is structured fairly well. I think, as opposed to 50, I'd be maybe a little bit more interested in seeing it after talking with Maine's having some sort of letter exemption process for any houses that are within that 75 limit. Because talking with them, one concern they had was if you move to 50, then it becomes a little bit, the upkeep becomes a little bit harder, and that people can be that much closer and smell things, and then can maybe try and get a citation off of it. You could be 50 feet as opposed to having to be 75 feet away and smell things. So at least that was what one concern made in case if they have anything they want to have, I'd be more than welcome to hear them. Make sure that I'm recollecting our conversation correctly.
Get our public comment now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to talk? Or have an old-
Yeah, I know I've got one card. I don't know what it is from Amanda, but
We got in here late, sorry.
yeah. If you want to grab a card, and Adam.
Yeah, I'm Adam.
State your name, address.
Okay, I'm Adam Knoll. My address is 19307 Diamond Lane. I'm the house probably closest to him, to the north. Been there for 3 years. Love the neighborhood, but I never had a problem with the chickens or the roosters. I grew up on a farm. Hardly even noticed. The only time I can hear the rooster is when I'm in the kitchen. So, and it's not noisy at all. We like it, so. And I don't have a problem with them. I even help them feed them while they're on treatment, vacation and stuff. I feed chickens and stuff for them. So.
You're the closest house to
I'm
them?
the closest. I'm one to the north of them. More than the red fence. So. Yep.
I am Casey Means. I live at 800 Northeast 194th Terrace. You guys, from what I heard of the discussion, hit most of the points that I talked with you and with you. There's not a whole lot of real science behind it. It's just kind of arbitrary, whatever a community wants to do. To clarify one thing that you'd said, it's not really a concern for us that it would be more stringent to be less smelly or less, all those things. I think that's actually a good thing, because it would, if you move it to 50 feet, it's easier to smell a chicken coop from 50 feet than it is 75 feet. So you have that much more rigor in that part of the law or the ordinance. It would encourage keeping them a little cleaner and less noisy. So it'd be making it harder on us, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because you want clean chicken coops in your community. That's good. Besides our specific issue here, it also seems like community-wise, we've had in the past few years an emphasis on homegrown kind of things, and the farmers market out here, we've got the makers mart where we try and do organic, local, community-based things, whether it's honey or jam or things like that. I think moving this to 50 feet would also be able to encourage other people to do that. We've taken the step to have our own chickens, have our own eggs. In other subdivisions where 75 feet, like literally right now, we didn't measure before we built the coop, which was our mistake. But when we did start going out and looking at it, we have no point in our yard where we can make a coop that's 75 feet from every structure. 50 feet we do. So there may be other people out there that looked at the regulations, decided I can't do this, so I just won't. I think it'd be a good thing if more people were doing it, because it's just a way to invest in the community a little more. Farm fresh eggs every day, able to give them or sell them to people, and just a more organic community kind of thing, which I think we've been trying to encourage over the past few years. So that's just kind of an aside, but other than that, I think the discussion so far has been what we talked about. We've hit everything. Yep.
And when I talked with Mike about it, their concerns, he brought up the rooster towards the tail end of the conversation, and said that there was one other neighbor who had said something to him. But his bigger concern was that they have field mice digging underneath their shed, and they have a patio that's all wood and pretty close to the ground. They have mice digging there. In my research, I can't see where that would have much of any correlation with the chickens next door.
Only if they can get access to their food source and stuff like that.
Right.
But in this case, I don't think that's the option because they're sealed up.
If the coop is being kept up well, that's not the issue. You're exactly right. And even then, I'm not sure much would be digging, 75 to 100 feet away.
They'd be
They'd be closer. So I'm not sure that there's a correlation there, that's from what I can tell. Do my amateur research. So yeah, through all this, I mean, if the board wants to move to 50 feet, I would have no issue with that. So that or the exemption letter.
The only thing I would be concerned about with the exemption letter is, let's say you get an exemption, right? You get a neighbor to sign off on it, and that neighbor moves, a new person moves in, and then they're like, I don't like this. I don't like that there's a chicken coop 10 feet away from me, or whatever. So maybe we should probably think about the actual feet. I mean,
We might even want to research it more than just throwing out the 52. We might want
Yeah,
to
sure.
look at what our zoning on lot size and everything too, because we don't want to revisit this in 3 years. Sure. So let's, to Casey's point, we are a rural community. There are going to be things like mice, and skunks, and possums, and chickens. So,
And, along with that, maybe we look, you shared Platte Cities and I think Liberties in here. I don't know if there's other communities, maybe instead of setting feet, it's more if there's an odor issue, and then that's when it's addressed. I don't know. But as far as all of the mice, rats and stuff, we have to realize we've got development going on where it used to be very wooded. So all of that's being displaced. So I think a lot of that could be coming from there because, you mentioned bunnies here. Well, I have a mom bunny and 3 babies hopping around in my yard. So I think we've got displacement because of the development as well.
Well, and even, Cynthia shared some of the other local ones, but I've read an NPR article about it, some as well. They cited, for example, the city of Oakland, massively bigger than what we have, but they have, if you're, for anything that's a half-acre lot or smaller, you can have 8 chickens without any, next door neighbor requirements that way. So, it really is all over the place.
it is. And that's to staff to come back with the recommendation.
So can we make sure that there's no enforcement or anything on what's going on right now? Because I think that might have been a concern, that they were told they had 30 days to get rid of it or something like that. While we're doing our deep dive.
Well, in the meantime, they have the power to legally fine, right? So.
Okay.
So yeah, and our next meeting's next week, so hopefully we can get something on the agenda for next week. And they're out there Monday as well for 30 days. But like Jeff said, there it is.
There's a reason that power exists.
I can wait it.
Okay.
Anything else?
Just for clarification for staff as we're going through. Wait, pardon?
That's where I thought it would come from.
We're comfortable with evaluating the reduction in feet.
Or just throwing it out.
Or just throwing it out in deference for something that would be more nuisance driven, which I think was some of the conversation maybe that occurred in 2012.
It is, and that's very similar to the conversation we had when we revisited dogs. If those of you that remember that conversation, a lot of new faces. So, it was very similar to that. Was, how many dogs are too many? 4, 6, 8, 10, 12? Or if you're really good at taking care of them and I don't know they're there, do I really care? So we went down that path. We visited that path. We walked that path. We walked it dry. So we can follow kind of that
Yeah.
premise and
Is
guideline.
that really nuisance, or is that where
And
more of the board likes?
Yeah, and we can do a little research,
Nuisance.
close communities
driven
here.
More than, yeah.
Yeah.
You're
It's hard to
that-
write, right?
Pardon?
It's hard to write.
It is hard to write, yeah, but if
Hard to
it's,
enforce.
it's, I know it when I see it. And that's the hard thing to write or enforce. But we can try to mirror what we're looking at for dogs and.
Yeah, then I think on the other side of it, once the decision's made, I think the way that information is presented and disseminated and communicated is important. I know Liberty did a very good job of that. That's where I got some of the information in the past. They had it out on their website. They had some nice handouts, flyers, some visually appealing stuff that when you saw it, it's like, oh, I want to read that. What is that? And it went down everything, laid it out nicely. So I think we can follow up on the backside with that as well. Try to finish things up once there's a decision.
That's the main out of the farmer's market.
Actually, yeah.
Losing tax?
Yep.
It's up to you. I mean, seriously.
It can, there's a what is they do, but, I'm not sure if they do.
I think one of the ones, at least one of the ones you were sent, they had a registration fee or something.
That was the
Maybe Potts.
that was, which one's me? I think I had the permit. And the registration fee, I think that was about it.
Chicken tax.
So we have our direction.
Anything else? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before we do that, if I could throw out, well, somewhat related to the topic we're discussing, I'd like to have a discussion at some point on retreat and then also budgeting on how we want to tackle that. I've kind of pushed priority-based budgeting. Is that the direction this board still wants to go, knowing we got Cynthia on board with background?
And we want to go ahead and schedule a work session for the 21st.
We do.
Do we have to?
Yes.
Think about items for them? Okay.
I think that budget discussion can be very good. And we could actually provide, Dan, can we do a 6-month? We could provide that 6-month update and have some information for you there.
All right, so it's May 21st at 7 p.m. For the work session. We have our regular scheduled session the 15th of next week. Got a lot to work on, so.
Maybe something HDR.
Awesome.
Yes.
Or not HDR.
I guess streetscape.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Adjourned.
You need to work on this. You need
Okay,
to work on this.
good, she's got the hearing aids, so.